Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining the Dating Options Fraud Prevention webinar. Now, my name's Bruno Unkolms and I am the Marketing Manager here at Dating Options. And what today is all about is educating you guys, educating the wider public on the issues of fraud, how it affects people in the dating industry, and also which authorities are trying to combat the topic of fraud. And how you can reduce the risk of yourself that you face, and of course loved ones who you know.
Yes, that's right. My name is Detective Sergeant Chris Buckingham from the City of London Police, transferred across from the Met, and this is a relatively new role for me, although I've worked in money laundering and fraud for some time. This is quite a unique post in that part of the role is engaging with businesses, companies, and for an eventual outreach to the general public is the ultimate objective. There's myself and one other performing this role on behalf of the National Fraud Intelligence Bureau, as hosted by City of London Police, which sits alongside Action Fraud. Now, I've been in this role since in July, and we're currently looking at the National Fraud Intelligence Bureau priorities for this financial year, which is set by the Home Office. We're a Home Office funded policing department, if you like, but with lots of strong partnership links across other competent authorities, government organisations, the likes of UK Finance and various others, all come into the mix, for want of a better phrase. So yeah, our mission in effect is to assist with the signposting and deliverance of crime disseminations from Action Fraud. Action Fraud itself is not a police force. It's a crime reporting tool. It came about in the late 2000s when there was a review into fraud and quite basically the police's handling of fraud in amongst all the various other priorities that are out there, in terms of burglaries, robberies, sexual offences, you name it. Fraud, unfortunately, has always been at the bottom of the pile. As someone once said to me, fraud doesn't bleed. Not in the immediacy, possibly not, but the knock-on effect of fraud is what it's all about. The psychological damage, the financial damage, the ruinous position it can put people in is the real damage. But unfortunately, you don't often see it. So anyway, Action Fraud is predominantly, for me, the single place to report fraud in this country. You may report to other places, of course, but in terms of a Home Office counting rule figure, when a crime is recorded, Action Fraud is the single place to record an instance of fraud, if you believe it to be a crime, as a crime figure. The fact that romance fraud is a priority this year, I'd imagine it will be a priority next year as well, as far as the Home Office agenda will be. So it's not going to go away anytime soon. And tackling it is a collective effort. It's not just down to the police. It's not just down to competent authorities and other regulatory agencies. It's down to the business sectors, and to a lesser degree and to a certain extent the general public themselves, in terms of being vigilant. So my role is to join these people up, really, in effect, look at where we can enhance our messaging out, who we would like to do some prevent and protect messaging with, who we can build collaborative relationships with in terms of what we can share with people and what we would encourage people to share with us, and so on and so forth, and many bits and pieces in between. So yeah, that's a quick overview, Bruno. I hope that was of help.
You mentioned something quite interesting there, where we all know that knowledge is power, and the power of information, and actually reporting that to the authorities, be it a profile when we're using certain dating apps, etc. I know that here at Dating Options, everyone who comes on board, anyone who comes onto our books as a member, is thoroughly vetted, checked for any involvement in fraud or any crime. But if we as an organisation come across some suspect activity, or perhaps a profile that we think is bogus, or when the public are out and about in their daily lives, could you just give us an introduction or a flavour of, one, how important communicating any suspicious activity is, and then secondly, how you work with companies like ourselves, where's that dialogue, and then of course looking at from a sort of a public's perspective, how can they get in touch with you, and how important is that data transfer, that communication? If you could just touch on that for a few minutes.
So the reality is, at the minute, the sector has been almost self-policed, if you want to call it that. And I pose a question of, when a profile has been looked at, or when someone has come forward and says, I don't want a dating file, or when an administrator on the business side has looked at a file and something about it isn't quite right, and there's reason to believe that fraudulent details have been used, whether it be the sort of well-versed term of identity theft, it's someone else's photo. I mean, okay, at first glance it might appear to be something innocent, it might be somebody using a photo 10 years younger, but worse still, they're using a photo of somebody else. Worse still, again, they're using somebody else's email, or an email that's not attributed to them, a pay and go throwaway SIM card number. All of these things, why are they doing that? Why are they trying to hide their identity? I would say, if there's suspicion of fraudulent activity, or there's a complaint from another member about somebody else's conduct, and they're making some sort of inappropriate, not saying that's necessarily sexual, that's a different thing altogether, but in terms of monetary terms, have a look at this offer, or pushy in terms of get rich quick schemes and investments and things like that, you could almost bet your bottom dollar it's going to be a scam, or there's every reason to suspect it's a scam. And as such, whether it's a dodgy phone number, email address, pushy behaviour into potentially unsafe financial investments, which otherwise should be directed to the Financial Conduct Authority, I would say in every instance, report it to Action Fraud, please. There's an information function. Any information is information, and it's all greatly received. Unless we know about it, we can't build out those profiles, and we cannot arm those other competent authorities, as I say, and share with relevant bodies within the sector. As I say, I'll be honest, we cannot, given we are a public authority, just share with information with people as freely as maybe we would like. But we can share when it comes to contractual arrangements, memorandum of understanding and so forth. But we can easily share, as I say, with other competent authorities and law enforcement bodies. All of that. So we encourage reporting, please. That's what it comes down to. We can only get the bad actors out there, the ones that are quite happy to have anyone on board because they're sending them some money, quite keen on rooting out what I would otherwise call a conduit for fraud, a host, an enabler, as is known in fraud terms, because improper hosted dating profiles and improper due diligence, albeit I appreciate it's not regulated by legislation, enables these people to act without any challenge whatsoever. So report to Action Fraud is the key message.
From your perspective, where do you think yes, we're involved in the dating industry, but how can other industries work with you? I mean, what's your end goal in an ideal world? How would you tackle the fraud landscape? How can we work alongside with you? How can we align our objectives? We talk about protecting your personal information, meeting in best practice when it comes to meeting in person, how to keep yourself safe. But what would you say the main takeaways, your focus is, that we can also align our best practice with?
Ultimately, when we look at the 4P model with regards to fraud, and for most agencies, associations, societies, member bodies out there, the principal ones you're always going to look at are going to be your prevent and protect, which is ultimately preventing your customer base from becoming fraud victims where possible, and obviously then protecting them from the possibility of such. There's a bit of crossover between the two concepts, but that's really front and centre what most consortiums out there would look to do. And we can assist by this, Bruno, in the fact that we initially liaised to begin with by making use of things, relevant member stories on websites, key prevent and protect messaging from partner agencies that we get involved with, the likes of the Take 5 to Stop Fraud campaign. There's the /romance scams on there. We're on there as City of London Police and National Fraud Intelligence Bureau. Active messaging at every turn. It's the only way to really get people to think about what they're doing before they enter into a contractual arrangement. Fraud prevention messaging is a way to just get that customer to think, I'm not sure on this, before they commit to something they shouldn't have done. And as I say, it may well be that there's nothing at face value initially wrong with a profile that they interact with. But if that member has the foresight and the ability to detect a possible likelihood that the person they're interacting with is actually got an agenda with regard to making an ill-gotten gain, then that's the sort of thing that you want members to be steered to going on the correct links and raising it themselves with action fraud, raising it with the host website or dating company, bring it to their attention, and obviously then by proxy we would like to think that company will raise it with us at Action Fraud. So it's key about prevent and protect messaging. I can't say that strongly enough.
Now I think we've got Eddy Ankrett, the lifetime president of the Dating Agency Association, online here with us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass you straight over to Eddy. Eddy, if you could introduce yourself, a little bit about who you are, what the dating agency does.
Anyway, I started in the dating business in 1992. I think it was by fate that I was brought into the dating industry. I was managing director of a large estate agency business, and I had a girl kidnapped on me in 1992 called Stephanie Slater. At the end of that, I ended up getting out of a estate agency and I also went through a divorce. So 28 years later, that was 1992, I started a dating business, which is a matchmaking business in Sutton Coldfield called Elite Introductions. And now 28 years later, I am still involved with the dating business. I've got a massive passion for matchmaking and online dating, and I've spent most of my 28 years helping and advising clients and keeping them as safe as we possibly can. So that's an introduction to me. I'm now chairman of the Dating Agency Association, which is the industry body for all matchmaking companies in the UK and internationally.
Now, what I'd like to do is shift the conversation to more of a best practice focus, which ultimately means keeping you and those around you safe. So I'm going to read a quick extract from the Dating Safely Handbook, which we at Dating Options produced in association and collaboration with the Dating Agency Association. So what it says here is that when we meet new and exciting people, an exciting potential partner, we naturally want to be seen as showing the very best of ourselves. So success and affluence are sometimes attributes that we feel may attract people to us. However, it's important to remember that anyone with a genuine interest in you is unlikely to feel the need to be provided with excessive information about your bank account. So if a new person starts to ask questions about your financial situation or your assets, or appeals to be offering you ways to invest your money, take a firm step back while you assess whether this is a disingenuous motive. So by keeping your personal situation private until genuine trust has been developed, you're protecting yourself from potentially insincere people. Chris, I'm going to hand that over to you. If you could give me your thoughts on what I just read out, some common sense tips, any tips or advice that you give with regards to keeping yourself safe. Obviously, you're representing the National Fraud Intelligence Bureau, but from a sort of human being element, if you will, give us your thoughts on that, if you could.
Carry on. Yeah, you have to bear in mind that that these people are there for the sole purpose of taking money, and they look for weaknesses in people. But let's be frank. Online dating is yes, it's fun and casual to an extent, but also people are there to find love, and love is an emotion. And these people are the ones who are there to, the ones who are ultimately there to steal in effect somebody's life savings or large chunks of their money are calculated organised criminals. There's no doubt about that. The initial hook won't be obvious. It might not be obvious for some while. You know, when you look at other fraud types, you know, you often think, oh, you know, the usual one. Let's give one that everyone will recognise. You know, that the HMRC, or, you know, brand names aside, you know, a post office, you know, a brand name that you would recognise comes in on an email and says, oh, you owe us this amount of money. Normally some governmental department, because that's across the board, isn't it? You know, a lot of people now, email phishing, are quite, oh, that doesn't look right. And I think more people question that now. More people question it because it's such a well-trodden ground in terms of fraud methodology of approach. Romance is a different thing altogether, as I say, and there's different avenues to look at. Those who are looking for long-term love may well want to believe someone or believe a situation, and the hook might not be obvious. This is what I'm saying. So that, you know, certainly with online dating, where it's a long distance relationship, say, right from the start, where it's all around getting to know the individual, you're not set to meet them in person for some time anyway, but that's obviously always the long-term plan. And there'll be subtle moves on extracting the information they need out of someone before they actually start to have confidence to then make their move into more sinister territory. But obviously by that point, the victim doesn't really give it any thought because they trust the individual. They may well have had an online only relationship up until that point, but these people are calculated. They're very well rehearsed, you know, and it's not a quick turnover crime for them. I mean, you know, some of these different internet cafes and other operating centres globally have been known where some of the actors there, the principal fraudster, could have well had several people on the go. I mean, sticking to the script with everyone must be difficult, but they do make mistakes. But it's just about typing your way out of it. But the reality is, they're sick, and with no ethical or moral standing whatsoever. They're quite happy to take what they can, and they'll invent any story and any character to come into the fray in order to achieve their objective. So, and they'll push the boundaries. So if the victim, firstly, they'll lure the victim into a false sense of security. That's the first objective, and they'll know when they've done that because they'll get the victim to do something that you wouldn't ordinarily do. But because the process has been quite a long and arduous journey of onboarding that victim to trust them fully, the victim, from the victim's point of view, they were entering into an online relationship from the start with the long-term vision of hopefully meeting and having plans together and so on and so forth. But in the short and mid-term, it's always going to be an online relationship. So with that, a certain amount of trust is exposed from the start throughout this journey. The suspect, on the other hand, has got a clear and ruthless intention of just taking money from them right from the start. But they know they can't go straight in with send me your bank details. Most people, you'd like to think, no, no, turn that away. So there's a process of sort of wearing them down, if you like, almost, you know, in the same sort of way of, sort of draw too many parallels, but like in a domestic relationship, certainly an abusive one, where you sort of slowly wear down your victim in order to into a submissive position. So they'll test the water with, oh, can you send me 50 quid or whatever, you know, I can't access my bank account. This, you know what I mean? And that's how it starts. So they'll start to ease bits of money into stories and scenarios that are to the layman believable. And of course, because they're in an online relationship of description, the victim wants to believe them. The victim wants to believe them because they found hopefully what they think will go on to be the love of their life, and they have emotions of that description from the get-go. I mean, as human beings, we're very social creatures, and I think our bonds with other people can quickly become established. And certainly where suspects, you know, the perpetrators are looking to exploit these vulnerabilities, they will know straight away who are the more keen ones. And it is sick, it is saddening, but it does happen. So the other point to make on this is that the victim may not be aware. So it's incumbent as well then, isn't it, on friends and family, other people in society to recognise the signs, you know, and the victim, your friend, your mum, your dad, whoever it may be, whoever, may be quite quiet about their relationships, but the telltale signs of, if you do the banking for them, why is there money missing from the account? Why are, different notes being made on the online bank account with, suspect sort of type, suspicious sort of messages with regard to where that money is gone? All these things are sort of press of questions.
One thing that I'd just like to pick up on there, you mentioned how these frauds can be very complex and over a number of years. It might be £20 here, £30 there, where the fraudster is testing the water, seeing how sort of vulnerable or how easy their victim is to perhaps groom. And it reminded me, I'd like to read a statement that we at Dating Options really do stand by. It's something that we've co-signed with the Dating Agency Association, and I think it's certainly pertinent to reporting even just the smallest amount of suspicious activity. The last thing we want is any of our members to look back in 2, 3, 5, 10 years time and to say, actually, I perhaps should have seen that coming, or these 2, 3, 4 things perhaps were suspicious, and they all may all add up. So it's written by the Dating Agency Association. Just don't forget that this was written in conjunction with us. So the Dating Agency Association requires its member agencies, i.e. Dating Options, to deal quickly and professionally with any safety or behavioural concerns. So however minor your concern may seem, you must communicate the issue with your dating agency. Our members' agencies are committed to ensuring that you feel supported and protected throughout your membership. And it's important that the public do not try to handle behaviour issues alone. By keeping bad behaviour a secret, you enable a perpetrator to continue acting inappropriately or suspiciously. So really key point, just to pick up on what you said there, was no matter how small, no matter how trivial, be aware of each instance sort of contributing to the longer game, which fraudsters have obviously got the time to work on. And so finally, I'd just like to I'd like you to go into a bit more detail from your experience, having your ear to the ground, working with fraud victims. Tell us how important it is to be so aware of each individual interaction. Like I say, we don't want people looking back in 2, 3, 4, 5 years time saying that those alarm bells, they make sense to us now. What would you say is the impact of not being so aware, of not flagging the small things? What would you say the impact on society, on your victims, from what you've heard, from the experience you have? How powerful, emotive and raw would you say this topic really is?
So it is real. This is what I'm saying. It is real. It is damaging, and people need to be alive to it. And I think this year, certainly with the COVID pandemic, it's even more pertinent, isn't it? Where more and more even traditional dating options, if you like, with regard to how you meet people, have been removed for the present time. More and more people are online than they'd have ever been before. So how else do you meet people at the moment other than engaging with them online, entering into a relationship of various descriptions of whatever objectives are set at the end of it? But ultimately, there's a lot of faith put in online and who you're speaking with. I mean, even when you do a video engagement, much like this, can you really be sure the person that you're interacting with is the very person that is set to have a date with you or set into some sort of relationship? And this is why due diligence is key, isn't it? I mean, not being rude, but from the suspect's point of view, they may have a consortium. They might put someone up as a front man, if you like, to do the video engagements, and someone else takes the money. All I'm saying is all options are open. It's all about trust, isn't it? And at what stage, the level of trust that you put into an individual in this type of fraud for dating is a one-to-one relationship and interaction. At one point, your trust is raised, and the faith you put into that person goes up and up and up. But the problem with romance fraudsters, they're quite happy to go up with that, move along gently and slowly in a lot of those situations before they get to a level where they've enticed the victim in to part with money. So it's just about being vigilant, trusting who you're dating. And if you're really not sure, just be mindful of the fact that there are bad actors out there. So this is key to it, isn't it? The due diligence piece. You know, if a customer member, you know, raises to the company, I think so and so's, you know, acting in bad faith, whatever, it's fraudulent behaviour. Please don't assume the customer's put in the action fraud report. If you've got that data and you've got others on the books, as it were, with regard to, oh, that person's come to notice before. Last week we didn't put the action fraud report in because we wasn't quite sure, but this week that name's come up again, you know, talking about investments or send them some money, whatever it may be. Just because you didn't report it last week doesn't mean you can't report it this week. Combine the two instances, put it into action fraud. So yes, it's got to be absolutely crucial. We can only combat what we know about in terms of, as I say, the prepare and pursue element, but the prevent and protect is about vigilance.
I think the big thing about this fraud situation is dating is very vulnerable for people, and as we've just gone through this pandemic, where we've got these words in mind, I wrote down this morning: think, check, beware. And I think if we could get across to the public, think, check, beware. The Dating Agency Association is very, very keen to support anything that will keep the clients safe. As you know, all the companies within the Dating Association, they check the clients out and they make sure that these people are the right type of people to meet. So I would just be interested to hear Chris's view on, you know, we are the Matchmaking Association. Bruno is a representative of one of our companies in the Matchmaking Association, and we are trying our best to do this webinar today to try and help the public stay safe. And I just wonder if Chris has been approached by the Online Dating Association, and if not, that just shows what the Online Dating Association and its companies are like.
National Fraud Intelligence Bureau, I think, have had some communication with the Online Dating Association. I'm not entirely sure to the absolute intricacies of the level of that. I mean, I haven't been involved in those engagements so far. Personally, I know there has been some interaction. I'm not saying there isn't more to be done. I'm sure there is. I mean, I personally haven't as yet. They are on our radar to interact with, and very much the same. To them and their member companies, we will be looking to reach into very much around the same agenda: to prevent, to protect, when to report, how to report, why to report, and so on, and the vigilance. Thank you, Eddie. You're absolutely right. I mean, any sort of phrase that springs into people's minds when they're in an interaction with people, whether that's where it's a date that started out online and has moved quickly into a physical meet, or it's something that has been physical and is now, because of the pandemic, in an online situation and circumstances have changed. Who knows? I mean, there is always a premise that the person you meet initially is fine, their circumstances change, 2 months later they're in some financial difficulty, whatever, and they're looking to make the most of the opportunities that present themselves. And you, in a friendship of sorts with the individual, you know, all I'm saying is there are opportunities. Just because something starts online doesn't mean it finishes online, and conversely, just because things start in person and move online doesn't mean there's not opportunities within that bad actors will come to be. And as they may well be that there's people there in life generally, or in any meeting scenario, that to begin with they're fine, but circumstances change and now they need to make some money, and one option available to them is effectively to rip someone off or to fraud them. You know, and then there's a vehicle of what information have they got about me? Oh, well, actually, I only gave them my, you know, other phone number or whatever. So it's just about being certain about who you're meeting as well. And this is why, as you say, the Dating Agency Association, with regard to doing good due diligence on clients, is absolutely beneficial, isn't it? So that, you know, you have your members trust that due diligence has been conducted. And this is the other thing we're going to come on to, is talking about with regard to how far you can go. It's all about what the contracts and terms of use say, isn't it? Certainly with the online dating, the online only ones that are out there, those platforms, that they themselves could pin a lot of this down more rigidly if it's set within the terms and conditions that, you know, for no prejudice, but we'd like your mobile phone number, we'd like an up-to-date photo, verified email address, etc. and so forth. And then if you don't want to do that, you don't use the platform.
Thank you for that, Chris. Thank you very much, and thank you to Eddy for both of your contributions. I would like to think that, you know, the delegates that have been viewing today have learned something. They're aware of the stakeholders who are out there, you know, and have an interest in reducing fraud in the dating industry, but then also, you know, the public, in the bigger picture. So thank you very much for your time. Thanks for your thoughts and your feedback there. If you want to learn any more options, simply Google dating options and we'll be there. We'll be the first website that you'll see. You can also email us in at info@dating-options.co.uk. I would also like to ask if you are involved in fraud prevention, if you have any stories, if you'd like to get involved with any of the content that we at Dating Options will be producing. You know, it's certainly our intention to be producing a lot more content as time goes on. You can email me personally at bruno@dating-options.co.uk, and I'm the marketing manager here. But certainly, first steps, I implore you to get involved by Googling Dating Options. Have a look at our brands, have a look at the safety that we do, the discretion that all of our members benefit from. We're an offline traditional matchmaking agency where you have a personal matchmaker, the human element, the human contact, and it's safe, secure and discreet. So that's a wrap for today. Thanks everyone for joining in. Hopefully you've learned something. If you'd like any further information, do let me know. And what I'm also going to do, I'm going to send an online version of the dating safety handbook that Dating Options produced in association with the Dating Agency Association. So that's full of best practice tips, more knowledge in there, and the whole idea behind it is preventing fraud from even happening in the first place. So if you'd like any more information, it's info@dating-options.co.uk. And thanks everyone for your time, and stay safe.